Usually, when we think of dolls, they bring back fond memories of our childhood. Playing with them, our friends or siblings carrying them around everywhere, or maybe it's that playground crush you had when you were 5 that they remind you of. For others, it may even remind us of our own children and playing with them and their dolls. Yet there are a few of us for who they provoke full blown terror. Our two stories today, yes, two, might just prove that these tiny human replicas should be feared. The first story today is Annabelle. Not the movie version, but the real story. Or as real as you can get it, coming straight from Ed and Lorraine Warren's mouths. The second story, if you stick around for it, is my own true account of an incident I had as I grew up with a quinceañera doll. It's a story I've never told anyone, so you guys get the first account of the tale. Let's get started. Are you ready? Then take my hand, hold it tight, and let's walk into the darkness together. Donna, a nursing student who lived in Hartford, Connecticut, was gifted a Raggedy Ann doll for her 28th birthday from her mother, who purchased it from a hobby store. This may make you think that Annabelle might have been a used doll and full of backstory that we didn't know about. However, by the dress that Annabelle wears, we can tell that she was probably purchased brand new for Donna in 1970. See, the calico pattern in the dress wasn't used on Raggedy Ann dresses before then, and we'd be able to tell if it was an older doll by looking for the clues in it, like a single eyelash, reversible faces, floral dresses. I won't bore you with all that info, but yeah, she is circa 1970. So Donna becomes enchanted with the gift and takes it home to her apartment that she shares with her roommate and friend Angie. We don't know how Angie first felt about Annabelle, but I'm guessing she isn't the type that is terrified of dolls since Annabelle was allowed to stay. Now, at first, everything seemed great. Annabelle would be placed at particular spots and be found in them, just as she was left. But that slowly began to change. Both Donna and Angie began noticing subtle changes in the doll's positioning. Donna would leave her on her bed, sitting normally, and would come back to find her sitting with her legs crossed or with her arm over a pillow when she had left her with it on her lap. Eventually, the movements became more and more noticeable, and the doll would be found standing up or leaning on a dining room chair when she had been left sitting. One time, they even found Annabelle kneeling on a chair. They later tried to replicate this and kneel her themselves, but failed. Now, I owned a Raggedy Ann doll as a child, and I can tell you that making her kneel is impossible. The doll is completely soft and the head weighs more than the body. So if you kneel her down and hold her there, it'll stay. But as soon as you let her go, the stuffing in her legs, which doesn't hold a form, will give in to the weight of her head and her upper body, and Raggedy Ann will fall flat on her face. Another strange occurrence is that they began to find pieces of parchment paper around their apartment that read, "Help us, help me, and help Lou." Lou was Angie's fiance and was staying with the ladies at the time when all of this happened. Annabelle seemed to have a particular dislike for Lou. You'll see why in a second. Oh, and here's the fun part about the notes. Not only were they written in children's handwriting, but they were also written on parchment paper, something that no one in the house bought or kept handy. So of course, like any normal people, when this first started, they thought that they were being pranked, but ruled that out pretty quickly. They also thought it might be an intruder and were able to rule that out as well. Eventually, Annabelle began to not just shift positions, but appear in entirely other rooms. One day, Donna came home and found the back of Annabelle's hand coated with a red liquid that looked to her like blood. I think it's safe to trust Donna on that, since being a nursing student, she'd know well what blood would look like. She also found 3 more drops of the red substance on Annabelle's chest. This prompted Donna to finally call a medium and get some answers. The medium held a seance and told him that the doll was being moved by the spirit of a 7-year-old child named Annabelle, and that the child used to play long ago in a field that was located in the very spot where the apartment complex that Donna and Angie lived in stood now. She also told him that Annabelle had died in that field, and that her lifeless body was found in it. Now, the movie states that Annabelle had died in a car accident, and I'll bring up a fact later about that. But try as I might, I couldn't find the cause of death for Annabelle in the field version of the story anywhere. Annabelle's spirit said that she felt comfortable with Donna and Angie, and that she wanted to stay with them and be loved. The women felt really bad for the poor girl's spirit and gave it permission to stay and inhabit the doll. They tried to be nice to Annabelle and give her the love that she asked for, but the incidents that continued to happen with the doll kept getting worse. As I already stated, Annabelle wasn't fond of Lou, and the feeling was mutual. Lou felt that the doll and the story of the child just weren't right. He warned Donna that Annabelle was evil, but because of what the medium had said, I assumed that Donna wasn't worried about it. She may have even taken a defensive stance considering the circumstances. Then Annabelle began to attack Lou, and things changed. The first attack happened while Lou was asleep. One night he was suddenly awoken from his deep slumber and realized he was immobilized by some unseen force. He began to look around him, probably frantically, and there, at his feet, was Annabelle. All he could do was watch defenselessly as the diabolical doll slid up his leg and positioned itself on his chest. The doll then began to strangle him, causing him to black out. The next morning he woke up and realizing what had happened to him, he told Donna and Angie, swearing that the experience had been real and not a dream. Not satisfied, Annabelle hurt Lou again. A short time after that, Lou was taking a road trip and was researching routes with Angie when they both heard a sort of rustling noise coming from Donna's room. Curious about it and knowing that it wasn't Donna making the sounds, Lou made his way over to the room and stood outside of the closed door, waiting for the noises to subside. Once they did, he opened the door and turned on the lights. Lou looked around the room and found nothing but Annabelle, laying on the floor in a corner. He approached the doll, and when he was close enough to pick her up, he got this feeling of someone being behind him. Lou quickly turned around, and although he saw no one, he immediately doubled down from a terrible pain on his now bleeding chest. They would later realize that the pain and blood came from 7 scratch marks on his chest, which were extremely hot to touch. 2 days after the incident, the scratches had fully healed. This is basically when Donna decided she had finally had enough. She contacted an Episcopal priest named Father Hagen, and he in turn contacted his superior, Father Cook, who then contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren. Most of you have probably heard of the dynamic duo, but for those rare few of you who haven't, Ed and Lorraine Warren were a married couple who were paranormal investigators. Ed Warren was a long-time self-taught demonologist, and Lorraine was a psychic who began to see auras and experience other paranormal phenomena since she was 7 or 8. They had investigated together some of the world's most famous hauntings and other supernatural cases. The number of cases that they were involved with surpassed 10,000 according to Lorraine. Both since have passed away though, Ed on August 23, 2006 and Lorraine on April 18, 2019. I'm sure I'll post a video about them on here at some point, but for now that's mostly what you need to know of them. So at this point, the incidents with Annabelle had been going on for about a year, but when the Warrens came in, they immediately contacted the medium and realized that the doll presented multiple signs of demonic possession, such as teleportation and manifestation, but came to the conclusion that the doll itself was not possessed, but instead was being manipulated by an inhuman entity that wasn't trying to possess the doll, but a human host. The Warrens convinced Father Cook to exorcise the apartment and cleanse the home. He also blessed everyone present. Donna requested that the Warrens take the Raggedy Ann doll with them when they left, and they agreed. As they left the apartment with Annabelle, Ed told his wife that they should avoid the highway because it was going to be a rough ride home. Ed proved to be correct, since as they were on the road, Lorraine claimed that the car kept having issues with its brakes failing and the engine stalling. She claimed that they almost crashed several times. She stated that Ed had to throw some holy water on Annabelle to try and calm it down, and that it seemed to work. That wasn't the end of their issues, however. Once they got home, Ed placed the doll in his study, but the Warrens claimed that Annabelle refused to sit still. She levitated and moved around the house to where they decided to move her to an office in the outer part of the house and locked her in. But still, she'd turn up back inside the house. Having failed multiple times to contain her, they built a wood and glass case especially for her. On it is inscribed a hand-carved prayer. They also added a sign under the case that says, "Warning, positively do not open." And from what I've seen in some pictures, they also attached a tarot card to the case, which makes no sense to me. Tarot is a divination tool. You can use it to manifest, and yeah, you might even try to embed it with energy to try to help. But I doubt it would do much help to protect against the demon that's clinging onto a doll and searching for a host. And you wouldn't be using the devil card anyway for that. In my humble opinion, that card was placed on that case purely for shock value, because 98% of the population doesn't know how to read the tarot. So they see the cards like the devil or death and immediately take them at face value, which shouldn't be the case with most of the tarot cards anyway. Oh, and supposedly, Ed also said a binding prayer over the case and doll every so often. No word on who took over this job after Ed passed away, though. So all this to prevent the doll from physically moving, but it's neither unbound the demon presence from it nor imprisoned the presence itself. We know this because the Warrens state that the doll is responsible for at least one death, along with other incidents that have happened since she was put in her cage. A priest who visited Annabelle wasn't really impressed and claimed that Annabelle didn't have any demonic powers, and basically laughed at the idea, then went on his way without giving her a second thought. As he was driving home, he ended up in an almost fatal car accident. His brand new car totaled. Just a coincidence? Not so much. See, he claimed that he saw Annabelle looking at him in his rearview mirror right before the accident. The death I mentioned before was also a crash. It involved a young man and his girlfriend who had visited the Warrens Occult Museum, which was basically the Warrens' basement, which had been filled with all kinds of items like Annabelle. According to Ed, and I quote, "Many of the objects in this room here have had dire effects on people. People have been maimed. People have been killed. People wound up in mental institutions because of many of the things that are right in this building here." The young man that passed probably heard Ed saying something similar that day, as he and his girlfriend took the tour that was offered by the Warrens at the time. But he also seemed to not be convinced by Annabelle's demonic powers. He began to mock the doll, laughing at her while tapping on the glass. He asked her to scratch him just as she had done with Lou. Ed kicked the young man out, and hours later the young man was in a motorcycle accident, where he lost control of the motorcycle and hit a tree. The young man died and his girlfriend ended up in a coma. She wasn't released from the hospital for over a year. The occult museum containing Annabelle closed its doors in 2019 due to zoning violations. The area is a residential spot and the streets were not equipped to handle the amount of parking that the museum required. They had plans to reopen in a new location, but ended up permanently closing down after Lorraine passed away. Her son-in-law now has possession of all of the items that were in the museum, including Annabelle, and does tours with them. In August of 2020, there were rumors spreading across the internet stating that Annabelle had escaped her prison, but Lorraine's son-in-law made a YouTube video where he quickly put everyone at ease by showing them the doll and letting everyone know that it was still in his possession. I do have some notes on this that you can skip if you're not interested and want to move on to the next story about my own creepy experiences with a doll, or you can continue to listen and get a few extra facts just for kicks. Okay, so this part isn't really that long, but the story I told you just now is the official version stated in the Warrens' website. However, in the 1980s, Ed gave a video tour of the Occult Museum, and in it he stated that the medium that Donna had found had said that the little girl who died in the field was 6, not 7, as is said now. He also states that the medium says that Annabelle died in a car accident, just like in the movie, outside of Donna's apartment, not in a field. And lastly, he also said that Annabelle was a Christmas gift for Donna, not a birthday present, as is stated now as well. So, why so many inconsistencies? They may have tried to change the story up some to keep it more interesting, or maybe Annabelle's story was just made up altogether. But considering the car crash trend going on in the tale, I think that Annabelle's passing in one would make more sense than in a field. Something I omitted from the story as well was that one of the key factors to agreeing that Annabelle was involved in demonic possession was the mark of the beast. In the Bible, that has to do with the Antichrist, but for paranormal investigators, it's simply when a demonic being scratches you. The reason why I omitted this was because usually demons work in multiples of 3. Lou had 7 scratch marks on his chest. A true mark of the beast would have had 3 or 6 scratches. It's the demon's way to mock God by taking the numbers of the Holy Trinity and turning it into something evil. You have that bit of info now, so do with it as you will. Now, the last fact, and the one that truly makes me question the validity of Annabelle, is this. Nothing in this story can be corroborated. We have no full names, no addresses, no specific dates. No one has ever come out and said, hey, yeah, that was me. The priests have never been found or admitted to an exorcism on their own free will. We have no dates on the young man's death in the accident. We have nothing at all to go on here because enough information was never given to us so that we could research. And no one involved seems to have wanted their 15 minutes of fame and come out and said, hey, it's me. Well, no one except for the Warrens, that is. So all we have here is the Warrens' word and a cased up doll that no one else is ever going to touch except for their family. One that was super guarded and which everyone was warned to never, ever, ever move, but who is now on constant road trips and doing tours all over the place. So I'm going to leave you with that. Mull it over, think about it, and then you decide what you're going to believe here. So now I'm on to my next account, which is my own personal tale. When I was about 13 or 14, and I'll spare you the pictures of that fiasco, my household somehow acquired a quinceañera doll that didn't belong to anyone in our home. If you're curious to know what that is, this is a picture of one. Not the one I'm speaking of, but it'll do. Latin families give these to their daughters when they turn 15 as a memento. No one in my family was turning 15 at the time, and I had seen my mother's own doll before and knew that that wasn't it. This doll wasn't pretty to me, but it wasn't sinister looking either. It had a light blue ruffly dress and blonde hair, which was kind of in a shaggy haircut. She was a normal looking doll, but the moment I looked at her, I knew something wasn't right. I felt something wasn't right. As the months passed, I began to unintentionally avoid the doll. At first, not realizing I was doing it, then I began doing it intentionally when I realized I was doing it. I'd be in a room with her and I wouldn't even look her way because I just knew that one day if I looked, I'd catch her turning her little head to stare right back into my own eyes. So when I turned 15 and received my own quinceañera doll, my mother thought it would be a good idea for me to have both dolls in my room. Now you have to understand that I am 1000% not the squeamish type. I've had quite a few supernatural things happen to me and around me. I play with pendulums and tarot cards and all kinds of things like that. So spirit and paranormal phenomena don't really scare me. Especially because deep down, I don't believe in most of this stuff unless I'm given proof, like beyond a doubt, that it's really not fabricated by some illusion. So I took the dolls and put them in my room, telling myself not to be childish or illogical. I placed my own doll in a mirror dresser facing me. She looked fabulous with her red and black ruffle and lace dress, and her hair as dark as mine and curled into perfect little ringlets. Nah, my doll didn't scare me one bit. The other doll I threw on top of a tall armoire I had, up where I would barely see her. I specifically faced her towards the door of my room, looking away from my bed. And for the most part, I'd forget the doll was there. Except for some occasions when I was alone in my room and I felt like someone was staring at me. I'd stop whatever I was doing and my eyes would instinctively fall on that doll. But there she would be, looking at the door, being a doll. Now, depending on how strong the feeling was and how badly it had freaked me out, I'd either turn on the TV, radio, or anything that made me feel like I wasn't alone with that thing in my room, or I'd quickly remember some task I had to do that day, realize that it needed to be done immediately, and I'd get out of there and go do that as fast as I could. But there was always a tiny voice in my head saying, was her arm slightly higher the last time I looked at her, or did her head always tilt a smidge to the left like that? So, one fine day, my mom was in the room with me and she said, "Oh, you moved the doll." I completely cluelessly and not even thinking about the doll in the blue dress, looked at my own quinceañera doll. "Not that one," she said, following my gaze. She points up to the top of the armoire. "This one. She was looking towards the door before." She said it casually, but I had a cold shiver run up my spine before I even looked. I slowly raised my gaze towards the doll, and to my complete and utter horror, the doll was now staring at me. Right towards the bed, right at the spot where I was sitting. She had even inched closer towards me since I had placed her in the farthest corner of the armoire that I could from me, and now she was at the center of it. And if you're thinking someone moved it, you're wrong. By that time, the only two people living in my house were my mother and I never let on to anyone, not even her, that I didn't like the doll until then. If it wasn't either of us, who moved her? I gave up my pretense then and there and decided that Annabelle's cousin in blue had to go. The next trash day, she was the first thing to hit that garbage truck. As it drove away, I felt this huge weight lift off my shoulders. But just because I've seen Chucky, I did check the whole house to make sure that she did not make a return. Thankfully, she did not. Now, after this happened, I asked my mom where this doll came from, and she didn't have any clue of it either. The only other person that was living with us at the time was my grandmother when the doll came in, and she had unfortunately passed away by then. But we thought it over, and there is no reason why my grandmother would just take a random quinceañera doll that didn't belong to anyone and bring it into our house. So it really is a mystery where this doll came from. Now, you can believe this story or not. You can believe I psyched myself out. That's fine. It's fine. You can even choose to believe in Annabelle or not. My point wasn't to convince you with this story that possessed dolls are running around everywhere, but rather to try and have you keep an open mind about it. Even if Annabelle turned out to not be real and was proved one day as made up, it could still happen. I know this all too well. So that's it. Leave a comment on if you think Annabelle really had a demon attached to it, and your theories on all these crazy car crashes that were happening in the story. You can also leave a comment on mine. I won't get mad either way, even if you don't believe me. It's fine. I don't mind. And remember that you can help me grow my small channel by helping me spread the word. Also, remember to like if you liked and subscribe if you want more. Until next time.